Is Skywatcher about to deliver proof of UFOs? On April 7th, they're promising something big, a major reveal that could rewrite everything we know about the phenomenon. But controversy is swirling. Why the military-grade gear? Is this a peaceful quest for truth? Or could it inadvertently trigger something darker? Today, we'll unpack Skywatcher's bold new update, dive into serious questions raised by Project Unity about militarization, and break down exactly what Skywatcher says they're about to reveal. This could be the moment we've waited decades for, or it could spark even more questions. Let's start by going straight to the source, beginning with Skywatcher's newly released statement or article titled Skywatcher Part 2 Update. I will read it word for word. Skywatcher Part 2 Update. Everyone, we want to share an update and address some of the questions we've seen online. We believe that Skywatcher has made real progress in understanding the phenomenon. While we can't respond to every comment, our top priority is to validate our work and then effectively share and communicate those findings with you. Upcoming releases. Releases have been slightly delayed, and we acknowledge that. We're dealing with a highly complicated subject that involves us both trying to simultaneously manage our operations and compose media that accurately communicates our progress. Despite the silence, progress has been tremendous. We are working to improve our systems and processes to communicate more effectively moving forward. We want to share our work with you as much as you want to see it. We also acknowledge the criticism that is inherent with this topic. We don't want to put out work that we are not proud of and that we cannot stand behind. Our entire team has been working around the clock in an effort to make meaningful progress towards our objectives. Here is the final immediate release schedule. The Skywatcher Disclosure Framework White Paper will be released next week. Skywatcher Part 2 video is completed and will be released the following week, April 7th. We'd also like to provide some clarity by briefly addressing comments we've seen online. Our intent, our commitment is to engage with the phenomenon peacefully and with a spirit of collaboration and discovery. Our focus is on data collection and understanding, nothing more, nothing less. There will be no hostile actions taken toward anything in the sky. The Project Unity raised an important point about concerns over defensive postures. Any protective measures you may notice are strictly for safety in the face of unknown or unseen or unforeseen circumstances. We are working in real time with an unpredictable phenomenon, ensuring a secure environment for all involved is essential. Our interactions with the phenomenon are governed by a clear ethical framework rooted in peaceful engagement. We approach this work with a commitment to honesty, collaboration, and responsible stewardship of any information or experiences that may arise. Every team member maintains full presence and intentionality during observations, balancing open-mind curiosity with critical thinking. While we maintain a strict non-aggression policy, we acknowledge the importance of appropriate boundaries. Our engagement is characterized by patience, emotional composure, and a recognition that truly understanding the phenomenon requires us to embody the same integrity and respect we hope to establish in any potential interaction. This ethical foundation guides every aspect of our work, from data collection to public communication. Our process. We are continuously refining our approach and taking every necessary precaution to ensure the integrity and safety of our work. We are private citizens engaging in a research project out in the open for the public to see. We do not claim to have all the answers about the phenomenon. We are in pursuit of that knowledge, the same as you, and we intend to share what we find with all of you. Our approach At Skywatcher, we are committed to rigorous scientific principles in all our work. Our methodology adheres to the fundamental tenets of the scientific method: systematic observation, measurement, experimentation, and the formulation and testing of hypotheses. This is why we're taking the time to ensure our data collection and analysis meet the highest standards of scientific inquiry. Exploring the unknown requires careful, deliberate, and measured approach. Going forward, we are dedicated to empirical evidence, peer review, and transparent reporting. We understand that advancing our knowledge of the phenomenon requires methodical, evidence-based investigation that can withstand scrutiny from the broader scientific community. This commitment to scientific rigor guides every aspect of our work, even as we push the frontier and take on a uniquely challenging mission of exploration. Media. Some have asked why we need a full-time producer. The reality is that this subject has been heavily stigmatized. If we want to engage not only those who already believe, but also those who are justifiably skeptical, we need to present our findings in a way that is clear, compelling, and responsible. For those wondering why we don't simply release the data, the truth is, it's not that simple. The phenomenon appears unpredictably, sometimes only as a brief flash of light in the distance, often evading traditional detection. This isn't a point-and-shoot situation. If you've ever tried to capture something fleeting at a great distance, you'll understand why raw data alone isn't always meaningful or convincing. We are using the best technology available, but detecting and documenting high-speed aerial phenomena remains a challenge. Our goal is to capture a robust, high-quality data set that can be independently analyzed and evaluated. Together, we stand at the threshold of confirming profound truths about our reality. This journey requires a global community of open minds and rigorous thinkers. Skywatcher aims to serve as the vanguard of this collective effort. Join us as we seek a deeper understanding of our universe and our place within it. Follow our progress, engage with our findings, and be part of this historic exploration." End quote. In just a moment, I'll analyze some of the key points from Skywatcher's Part 2 update. But first, let's take a look at the tweet Skywatcher directly referenced when they mentioned concerns raised by Project Unity about defensive postures. Here's Project Unity's tweet from March 18th, and I quote, "Dear @Jake Barber 2025 and the @Skywatcher HQ team. Firstly, I want to acknowledge the important work you're doing in exploring and documenting UFO contact phenomena. It's clear that you approach this with dedication and professionalism, and I respect the effort and expertise you bring to the field. That said, I feel compelled to express a concern regarding the optics and potential energetic consequences of incorporating military-style equipment and a defensive posture into CE5-style contact protocols. CE5 is fundamentally about establishing peaceful, conscious communication with non-human intelligences through states of unity and trust. The very nature of these practices requires a mindset of vulnerability and openness, not one of perceived threat or defensiveness. The inclusion of biopod-mounted heavy assault weapons and the promotion of Skywatcher as a provider of advanced aerial intelligence and protection system, founded by former military and intelligence professionals, creates a significant contradiction. Even the subtle perception of threat while entering these delicate states of consciousness risks the manifesting of hostile responses. This isn't just theoretical. Countless contactees have reported that the quality of interaction is deeply influenced by the emotional and psychological state of the participants. My concern is not only that this militarized approach could distort the nature of contact, but also that it raises broader questions about the underlying intent. If the aim is truly peaceful contact and mutual understanding, why the overt military posture? It risks framing the experience as a confrontational rather than a communion, which could not only skew the outcome, but also send the wrong signal to those engaging in similar practices. I hope you receive this in the spirit it's intended, as a sincere inquiry and a desire to ensure that CE5 and similar contact protocols remain grounded in peace, openness, and connection. As an experiencer myself through these peaceful contact methodologies, it is a subject of great importance to me. I know many others on X would love to understand more about the rationale behind the security measures and how they align with the ethos of contact work. Looking forward to hearing your thoughts." End quote. Now, let's dive into all of this. So let's start off with me clarifying that I'm a huge fan of Skywatcher. Huge fan. At the same time, I have developed a cynical mental framework about the phenomenon. I'm sure I've always been cynical. I mean, my alien AI hypothesis began years ago. I have a playlist on my channel where it goes back many years. I've been developing this hypothesis for a long time. I've been thinking about it for a long time. So I've always been cynical. And I'm cynical, not in the sense that I doubt the phenomenon exists. I'm highly confident, albeit not certain it exists. I'm actually amazed that the cover-up has been possible. It's a miracle, it really is. And I'm also amazed that the phenomenon has chosen to enforce its ontological stalemate in a way that seems absolutely impossible. Just a quick review. The ontological stalemate is basically that all of the smoking gun evidence that exists on planet Earth, validating scientifically that we're not alone, it's all exclusively in the hands of those committed to the secrecy. That's not a coincidence or a statistical anomaly. That is a manifestation of intention by the phenomenon itself, in my opinion. It's all in militaries, governments, intelligence agencies, aerospace corporations, and if it is in some private hands that's maybe quasi-government or not government at all, it does not challenge my argument at all, because the basis of my argument is that the smoking gun evidence every single time for 70 plus years always finds its way into the hands of entities committed to secrecy. In my last video, I went hard, son. You know what I'm saying? I went hard in the paint because it bothers me when people are so biased about this. It really bothers me. We got to try to be objective. And I'm not saying I proved my case, but I think I demonstrated an incredibly strong, substantive, evidence-based argument that it's unlikely that this ontological stalemate is just some kind of statistical anomaly. And so based upon that, why is Skywatcher going to succeed where everybody else has failed? I don't know. This is where my cynicism comes in. But like I said, I'm a huge fan of Skywatcher because they're making an extraordinary effort to get smoking gun evidence, something that we all absolutely need if we are going to progress as a civilization. And just to clarify, I'm cynical, but I'm still pushing for government transparency, and I'm still pushing for scientific efforts to get that smoking gun evidence because I'm as pro-disclosure as any human being on the planet. I just understand the difficulty simultaneously. Now, let's go right into Skywatcher's article, the Part 2 update. let's cover some key parts and I'll give you my commentary. I'll read sections of it and then I'll give you my commentary. And I quote, "We want to share our work with you as much as you want to see it. We also acknowledge the criticism that is inherent with this topic. We don't want to put out work that we are not proud of and that we cannot stand behind. Our entire team has been working around the clock in an effort to make meaningful progress towards our objectives." Well, end quote. Well, they're correct. The criticism is inherent in this topic. And I want to explain why. It's actually quite simple. And maybe some Skywatcher people are watching this. The reason there's so much criticism entrenched in the UFO topic is because all anybody wants is proof. Just like any other scientific mystery. There's an animal in the Amazon that tribes there have witnessed. They inform biologists. The biologists go out there to an observation station. They get video footage of that biological animal. And then they keep coming back to continue studying that newly discovered biological animal. That's how science generally works. And now, I acknowledge that with the UFO issue, we're dealing with higher intelligence, so it can evade detection and it can meticulously orchestrate who gets the smoking gun evidence and who doesn't. It can outsmart those that are studying it. And that's what distinguishes UFOs as a scientific mystery from other scientific mysteries. I understand that. But at the end of the day, the reason there's so much criticism inherent in this topic is because everybody fails. Without question, NIDS, the National Institute of Discovery Science, that was run by real estate mogul Robert Bigelow, I don't remember the exact dates, but I think it was about 9 years that they engaged their efforts to get smoking gun evidence. They failed. Now, Skinwalker Ranch is owned by another real estate mogul, for that matter, Brandon Fugel, billionaire. He has a team there, I think 365 days a year, 7 days a week, with a lot of technology, a lot of sophisticated technology. They've been there for many, many years at this point, and they have failed. As hard as they tried, they have not gotten the smoking gun evidence of non-human intelligence. And that's why there's so much criticism. That is why. It's not complicated. It's not even necessarily bad faith or mean-spirited. People want proof. And that's understandable, because that's a rational approach to any mystery, is we want proof. So if you're wondering why everyone is so prone to being critical, it's because they're never getting the very thing they desire, which is proof. And I quote, "Our intent, our commitment is to engage with the phenomenon peacefully and with a spirit of collaboration and discovery. Our focus is on data collection and understanding, nothing more, nothing less. There will be no hostile actions taken toward anything in the sky." At the Project Unity, raised an important point about concerns over defensive postures. "Any protective measures you may notice are strictly for safety in the face of unknown or unforeseen circumstances. We are working in real time with an unpredictable phenomenon, and ensuring a secure environment for all involved is essential." Okay, allow me to read between the lines of this statement by Skywatcher. My perception is the reason they go out there armed is simply because there are people that don't want them to do what they're doing. If you recall Jake Barber's story, I think it was in the Sierra Nevadas, him and his team went out to collect tough books, I think they call them, basically hard drives with sensitive data on them regarding data and information collected on maybe the UFO crash retrieval program or UFO performances themselves. And I'm not quite sure, but there was very sensitive data on those tough books. Him and his team went out to a very remote area of the Sierra Nevadas, and they were shot at by somebody. So yeah, they go around packing heat when they go out on these expeditions because they want to feel secure, just in case someone, probably as a deterrent. I mean, I don't know. Maybe they're very paranoid, or maybe they have a reason to be paranoid. I don't know, but I think that is the overriding reason why they have military style equipment, just as a precautionary for them and their team, being out in the middle of nowhere when they go on these expeditions. But I don't really know. You'd have to ask Jake Barber. I don't think it's because they're protecting themselves from the phenomenon itself, because if the phenomenon wanted to hurt them, their projectiles probably aren't going to stop it. And yeah, I'll leave that section as it was. And I quote, "We do not claim to have all the answers about the phenomenon. We are in pursuit of that knowledge the same as you, and we intend to share what we find with all of you." End quote. This is a very powerful statement. They're basically saying we're not UFO gurus, which is moniker the right word? Say something nasty in the comment section if I'm wrong. But that's a moniker that I use for people that preach about UFOs as if they have all the answers. So I'm pleased that they explicitly say we do not claim to have all the answers. We are in the pursuit of that knowledge the same as you. In my opinion, that's exactly what you want an organization like this to say. You don't want them to tell you about the inner workings of non-human intelligence, because does anyone really know? We're entitled to our opinions, but we're not entitled to our facts. And I quote, "Our approach at Skywatcher, we are committed to rigorous scientific principles in all our work. Our methodology adheres to the fundamental tenets of the scientific method: systematic observation, measurement, experimentation, and the formulation and testing of hypotheses. This is why we're taking the time to ensure our data collection and analysts meet the highest standards of scientific inquiry. Exploring the unknown requires a careful, deliberate, and measured approach." End quote. Okay, so I'm glad they're utilizing the scientific method and holding themselves up to scientific standards, because that's what our civilization uses. That's how our civilization determines what's real and what's true. We form hypotheses, we test the hypotheses, and then we get our answers. I hope Skywatcher gets the smoking gun evidence, because as I said in the opening of my analysis, the reason the UFO community, the reason scientists for that matter, are so critical of the UFO issue is because everyone wants the same thing and nobody's getting what they want: smoking gun evidence. And I quote, "For those wondering why we don't simply release the data, the truth is it's not that simple. The phenomenon appears unpredictably, sometimes only as a brief flash of light in the distance, often evading traditional detection. This isn't a point-and-shoot situation. If you've tried to capture something fleeting at great distance, you'll understand why raw data alone isn't always meaningful or convincing." End quote. Okay, straight off the bat, Mr. Barber, you and your team were literally retrieving craft off the desert floor within controlled ranges owned and operated by the United States government in concert with aerospace corporations. You had psionic assets at these locations. Sure, as I understand it, sometimes the craft would land a little outside of the range, but by and large, these craft were landing in a manner that was accessible to the crash retrieval program, right? They weren't landing in a national park where everyone might end up seeing it. They weren't landing on the soccer field or the football stadium or in the middle of a park in Central Park in New York City. So if they were cooperating with the crash retrieval program, if they were cooperating with those committed to secrecy, here's my question for you, Skywatcher. Why can't they cooperate with those who are willing to be transparent about their reality? Riddle me that. It's frustrating because we are experiencing deception, not just by governments, militaries, intelligence agencies, and aerospace corporations, but we are experiencing deception by the phenomenon itself by giving all the smoking gun data to those committed to the secrecy, but not to those who want to know more about their universe and want to share it with the rest of humanity. That is a problem, Skywatcher. That is an inconvenient problem, and I'm going to be the a-hole who never desists to highlight that. It is my mission in this life, and it will be my mission in every subsequent incarnation. Well, hopefully not. Hopefully I'll find a new hobby by then. But seriously, it's really irritating. It's genuinely irritating. And it's weird how this is not talked about very much in the UFO community. But, you know, I don't want to rehash my previous video. In fact, I'll put my previous video as the first link in the description because I think people need to watch it if they haven't. But the question arises, Skywatcher, why does it have to be unpredictable with you when it wasn't unpredictable with the crash retrieval program? Now, I'm world famous for seeing rebuttals 1,000 light years away. So this is what's going through your head right now. Well, they've been at it for 60 years. We need to catch up. We're just starting. And in fairness, I think you said exactly that. So I'm just reiterating what you said. But I don't, that's a very convenient answer, and it doesn't really inspire confidence. The phenomenon, so I'm reading this part of your update again. The phenomenon appears unpredictably, sometimes only as a brief flash of light in the distance. If the phenomenon's listening right now, do me a favor. Don't appear as a brief flash of light in the distance when Skywatcher is studying you. Do me a favor. How about appear as a cube, a metal cube, a perfect metal cube, or a perfect flying saucer that is unmistakable, unambiguous, and Skywatcher gets it in its totality in a scientifically robust way that leaves no other interpretation than that thing is not using conventional technology, that is of unknown origin, and that is a profound mystery. Can you do that for me, Phenomenon? I'd really appreciate. Okay. Let me go ahead and read a little bit more. Later, Skywatcher's article goes on to say, we are using the best, and I quote, we are using the best technology available, but detecting and documenting high-speed aerial phenomena remains a challenge. Our goal is to capture robust, high-quality data set that can independently independently analyzed and evaluated. I just wish they wouldn't be so high speed, so that your job would be easier. Unless, of course, they're deceptive and they're playing a game, and instead of making it easy for you, they're making it hard for you. Yet they make it easy for militaries, intelligence agencies, governments, and aerospace corporations. It's mind-boggling. Okay, and I quote another part of their article. Together we stand at the threshold of confirming profound truths about our reality. This journey requires a global community of open minds and rigorous thinkers. Absolutely, Skywatcher, absolutely. But this journey does not begin without smoking gun evidence. The whole world will unite in a profound level of commitment to discern what's going on once that smoking gun evidence emerges into the public domain. And I've been harsh on Skywatcher. I've been harsh on the UFO phenomenon, and now I'm going to be harsh on some of the UFO community. And this is not picking on anyone specifically, and this goes back, this is nothing new. But there's this weird tendency by some people within the UFO community to downplay and dismiss disclosure, which is basically, from my perspective, they are the victims of a Jedi mind trick instituted by the phenomenon itself. Because there is nothing remotely logical about people interested in this topic downplaying the very mechanism that would make the entire world investigate it. I mean, that is just patently absurd and insane. And it makes me feel like I'm taking crazy pills. Okay, so now we're going to read Project Unity's tweet from March 18th that was actually referenced in Skywatcher's article. So let me begin reading the sections that I want to analyze. And I quote, "Firstly, I want to acknowledge the important work you're doing in exploring and documenting UFO contact phenomena. It's clear that you approach this with dedication and professionalism, and I respect the effort and expertise you bring to the field." End quote. Okay, the reason I wanted to read that is because Project Unity is very clear about honoring and giving weight to what they're doing straight off the bat. So even though he's critical, it's only fair to acknowledge that he also acknowledges the solid effort that they're making that's very legitimate. Okay, another paragraph from his tweet, and I quote, "That said, I feel compelled to express a concern regarding the optics and potential energetic consequences of incorporating military-style equipment and a defensive posture into CE5-style contact protocols. CE5 is fundamentally about establishing peaceful, conscious communication with non-human intelligences through states of unity and trust. The very nature of these practices require a mindset of vulnerability and openness, not one of perceived threat or defensiveness." Okay, end quote. With all due respect to Project Unity, I really don't understand this infantilizing of the phenomenon. I just don't understand it. It doesn't make sense to me. It comes off as nonsensical to me. Allow me to substantiate my perspective. We're dealing with non-human intelligences that are vastly more sophisticated than us talking monkeys, that may have equipment that can actually go through mountains, can descend below the ground, potentially. Intelligences that are abducting people, removing them from their bedrooms, through their houses, their apartments, bringing them presumably on craft, studying them often in incredibly traumatic ways, then returning them, and sometimes doing this throughout their lives so that they'll never really get a great night's sleep, because every time their head hits the pillow, they're wondering, am I going to get abducted tonight? Moreover, they seem to be in our oceans. I mean, there could be hundreds of thousands of these things. I don't mean to be disrespectful. There could be hundreds of thousands of these entities in our oceans. They're studying our militaries, right? And this is an inconvenient truth that some people don't want to give weight to. And look, look, I'm not claiming I'm without bias, but I really commit to being unbiased as much as possible. So I'm going to probably piss off everybody because I try to analyze the phenomenon the way it really is without injecting my desires or looking to confirm my biases. Lou Elizondo is 100% correct when he says that non-human intelligences, UAP, have a special interest in military equipment, whether, and monitoring, and it seems like they're studying our capabilities. It doesn't mean it's nefarious. Maybe they're just interested to see where our peak technological advancement, what our peak technological advancements are that are often found and concentrated within military technology. On the other hand, we do not have open contact. They're not, as far as we know, and if we do have open contact, it's sub rosa open contact, because we're all 8 billion of us are in the dark. We don't know their intentions. We don't know their agendas. So let's be very careful not to deify the phenomenon, because they don't deserve to be deified. And by the way, trust is earned. It is not given. It is not given. It would be irrational to give trust to higher intelligences that are completely covert, Yes, sometimes they allow themselves to be seen, but they've also engineered the ontological stalemate, and they've also given all of the smoking gun evidence to entities like governments, militaries, intelligence agencies, and aerospace corporations, leaving the rest of all of humanity in the dark. So if you've come here for sugarcoating, you're not going to get it. You're going to get a human being who literally strives to be objective, who is open to rebuttals. All right? I'm open to your rebuttal. Maybe I got something wrong. Maybe I'm biased. Or, of course I'm biased. Maybe I'm excessively biased. But like, if you're looking for sugar-coated stuff, you ain't going to find it here. Because I can't stand that stuff. I can't stand it because it doesn't seem like it's fair-minded. It's like the inverse of bad faith. You know when you go on Twitter and people argue in bad faith? Well, it's like the inverse of that. They're bad faith in the sense that they're giving they're deifying the phenomenon. They're infantilizing the phenomenon. Why? I'm not saying that Project Unity does that in totality. I'm not saying that. I'm saying that a lot of the UFO community is prone to that, and I don't buy into it. I don't buy into it, and I find it so odd and contradictory. I find it very contradictory when people are so skeptical of governments, which they should be, but then they give this like spiritual aura to the phenomenon when trust is earned. It's not given. And if your currency for trust is because they haven't invaded and killed all of us, then I don't know what to say, because that is a failure of critical thinking on a level that I don't even know that I can begin to unravel, to be quite frank. And if you're seeing frustration in me, it's because there's so much illogical and subjective takes on the UFO phenomenon that to me is just unwarranted, and I just don't understand, and I push back against it. Okay, I'm sorry for that diatribe, but I'm known for my rants. Let me take a breather. Okay, I'm back. Let me continue with another paragraph from Project Unity's, basically it was like a letter to Skywatcher, and I quote, the inclusion of bipod-mounted heavy assault weapons and the promotion of Skywatcher as a provider of advanced aerial intelligence and protection system founded by former military and intelligence professionals creates a significant contradiction. Even the subtle perception of threat while entering these delicate states of consciousness risks the manifesting of hostile responses. This isn't just theoretical. Countless contactees have reported that the quality of interaction is deeply influenced by the emotional and psychological state of the participants. Okay, end quote. I think that's a fair argument by Project Unity. And look, I'm very happy to get Project Unity's take, even if I don't resonate with all of it. I've never been one to celebrate echo chambers. I like getting other takes. I like my perspectives to be challenged, but at the same time, I also like viewpoints to challenge each other, and maybe something more pure will emerge, something more measured and accurate and aligned with reality. Project Unity is right. There have been reports that your consciousness can influence the way the phenomenon operates. However, I would balance that out with saying that in the same way that he says that it's not theoretical that countless contactees have reported that the quality of interaction is deeply influenced by the emotional and psychological state of the participants, it's also not theoretical that people that get abducted are not really bringing it on themselves, in my opinion. I'll give you one example. J. Christopher King, who is an abductee. He's very well known in the UFO community. He's about the nicest guy you're ever going to run into. He seems like he has a very loving spirit, and that didn't seem to protect him from getting abducted. And the reason I bring that up is simply because we have to be careful with generalizations, right? I'm not saying Project Unity made any generalizations, because I think what he stated has validity within the literature. I'm just saying that it's not bulletproof. You can have a very kind heart, a very kind mind, and you still might have interactions with the phenomenon that you did not request or desire, and that are highly traumatic. Now, that all being said, as I have spoken in depth with James Iandoli of Engaging the Phenomenon, who is one of the premier experts on the planet with CE5. And he has confirmed to me that people who engage in CE5 almost never have bad experiences. I think that's what he stated. It's extremely rare. And I think when I asked him and when we discussed, I told him when I last interviewed him on my channel, I said, look, it's possible that the abductions are coming from entities that are not the same entities that engage people when they go out in the field and do CE5. And I think he might have said that's probably true. So there's a lot of complexity in this discussion. I'm very happy that, I'm actually really happy that Project Unity wrote this letter, because by him writing this letter, he elicited a response from Skywatcher, and so got Skywatcher to address issues they may never have addressed, and so we get a bigger, more textured and a nuanced picture of what's going on. So I didn't mean to come off as antagonistic to Project Unity. I like his letter. I think it's good and it was well written, and he brings up a lot of good points. And I'm glad to get his take on the phenomenon. It's great to get his take on the phenomenon. It's great to get people's takes that don't perfectly align with my own. And at the end of the day, as I kind of said in the beginning, we really need smoking gun evidence, because this topic should not remain in the fringe. And I know there are people in the UFO community fond of saying things like, we've already had disclosure, there's nothing else to accomplish in that arena, but that's just not true. The fact of the matter is, while it is true that we've made extraordinary progress since the December 16th, 2017 New York Times article got released, and while it is true, in my opinion, that we've made more progress in the past 6 or 7 years than we have in the past 60 or 70 years, it's also true that the UFO issue, by and large, is still fringe. And the proof is in the pudding. Because if it wasn't fringe, then there would be billions or trillions of dollars going into studying it in the public domain, and it would be like one of the number one priorities of the scientific community to get to the bottom of. But it's not, and the reason it's not is because we haven't had disclosure. And one of the arguments I made in the last video I published, description is a link is the first. It's the first link in the description box below. But one of the arguments I made is that the reason that aerospace corporations and governments and militaries have spent so much money studying the phenomenon isn't because they're intrinsically more curious than the rest of the world. It's just because they have the smoking gun evidence that incentivizes and motivates them to put that money into it. Whereas the public domain, all 8 billion of us, we lack that smoking gun evidence. And if we had it, we would be every bit as aggressive in putting money into research as militaries and governments are. So that disparity has to end. Because if it doesn't end, this artificial construct will continue. And I think we need to find a way out of it. Independent of who's responsible, I think it's obvious. In my opinion, both governments and the phenomenon have something essential in common. They don't want smoking gun evidence of the reality of non-human intelligence to enter the public domain. That's just an obvious interpretation based upon where all the smoking gun evidence is. I mean, I feel like I don't need to say this, but I will. If the phenomenon wanted all 8 billion of us to know it existed, it could simply present itself to us the same way that it presents itself to the military and to aerospace corporations and so forth. Like, instead of landing or crashing within the range of Area 51 or some other test range, why not do it in a place where the scientific community can take a look? And this is not complicated. Is there anything else? No, I don't think there's anything else. I'm so glad if you've stayed with me this whole video. I appreciate it, and I appreciate Skywatcher, and I want Skywatcher, and I want the viewer, I want Project Unity, I want the UFO community to understand something. In my opinion, it is completely rational justified and human to get extremely frustrated over the UFO issue. Because it's not operating organically. It is operating intentionally. It is operating according to the agency of the phenomenon. And that agency has led to the disparity in who has the smoking gun evidence and who doesn't. And this disparity has persisted for 70 plus years. And I don't know why anyone would not be frustrated by that. If someone's not frustrated by that, then God bless you. But it frustrates me. And I think in a post-disclosure world, my frustration will be even more well understood and clarified. And what I mean by that is, I don't think we can adequately comprehend the absurdity of the situation we're in right now in a pre-disclosure world. It will only be in a post-disclosure world where we will look back and say, yeah, 70 plus years, non-human intelligence lives in our biosphere. Governments, militaries, intelligence agencies, and aerospace corporations around the world know this scientifically, and yet the remainder of the world, 8 billion plus people walking around basically choosing their own version of reality because they lack the smoking gun evidence that this tiny minority has. Like, that's just messed up. And that's messed up by definition. And I don't know why the phenomenon does this. I don't think anybody does, unless there was an agreement made between governments and parts of the phenomenon and it was revealed to the governments. But my most optimistic take is this engineered situation is done because when disclosure finally comes, it will help awaken humanity in a way that if the phenomenon would have revealed itself sooner to all of us, such an awakening would not have occurred. But that's another conversation for another place and another time. I thank you so much for listening, and I hope we do get disclosure soon, because I do believe it will be an awakening for all of humankind in a variety of ways. And I will probably dedicate a video explicitly on that in the not too distant future. With that, please do not forget to subscribe. And if you'd like to support this channel, you can become a patron. You could become a YouTube member. You could give me a one-time donation. All those potentialities can be accessed in the description box below. Or you can just slap a like on this bad boy, and I will appreciate it so much. Thank you so much for watching, and I look forward to seeing you in the next episode. Special thanks to all YouTube members, patrons, those that have bought merch, those that have given me a one-time donation. I couldn't do it without you. Thank you so much. See you in the next episode.